New Thought Media Network proudly presents New Thought Men's Community Podcast. Mondays at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. With your host, Eamon Duffy. Watch live or anytime on YouTube at New Thought Men's Community. Join Eamon Duffy and his guests as they explore what it is to be a spiritual man today. In partnership with New Thought Media Network. New Thought Men's Community, empowering wholeness, centered in spiritual living.
Hello and welcome to the New Thought Men's Podcast, where we explore what it is to be a healthy spiritual man today. I'm Eamon. It's great to have you with us. Welcome to the New Thought Men's Podcast. I am Eamon. Today we are here with Mark Gilbert. Mark, so great to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Eamon.
Yeah, Mark has been an active role in this community, a supporter on the board, as a council person, as a support and mentor. So many different roles you have played, Mark. So I'm just so grateful that you're here today, and just want to celebrate you and appreciate you in how much you have supported, this specific New Thought Men's community. So we're so grateful. But I get ahead of myself. For those of you who don't know Mark, let me just introduce him a little bit. So Mark is an ordained minister with the Centers for Spiritual Living, who has been involved with New Thought Men's work specifically for over 20 years. His teachings can be found in 4 books and on his blog site, Conscious Bridge, and his YouTube channel. Most recently, he compiled and played an essential role in the new Ernest Holmes book, Ernest Holmes at Asilomar. So if you want to find out a little more about Mark, you can check out consciousbridge.com. Mark has great videos. We'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end, but so great to have you here, Mark.
And great to be with you.
And you had done a sharing for us in the summit, the New Thought Men's Summit. And in that, you had talked about it was spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer. Mm-hmm. And I just want to thank you for taking that one on. It really is, being that we're talking about foundational pieces of New Thought, and this really is kind of our foundational ritual or process by which we help shift our own consciousness and another's consciousness to raise them up to a different vibration, a different understanding, a different receivership, and clarity. So in a minute, we're going to talk about spiritual mind treatment and the process and kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it. But before we do that, I just share a little bit about men's work, because you've done so much men's work, and share a little bit about your story and your journey in men's work.
Yeah, and it's hard to divorce men's work from the spiritual journey itself that started probably, with birth, obviously, but from a state of an awareness level, it was probably in my late teenager years that I really became sort of fascinated about the sense of consciousness, why I'm here, asking myself bigger and deeper questions. But of course, like many people, rolled into college, out of college, married, kids, jobs, career, all the material world stuff that you focus on as an adult. And in the backdrop was this why am I here? Why do I have this conscious awareness? What is my true role and purpose in life? And all these things would swirl around. And they would lead me into stuff like, meditating and seeking out different spiritual paths, Eastern religions, going to metaphysical shops, and looking for things that would bring me wisdom and understanding to life. So there was this continuous mixture of wondering about the mystery of life, coupled with I'm navigating through the aspects of this life on Earth, and it was. And anytime I tried to bring the topics up with other men, they would look at me sort of like I was clueless or weird or whatever. And, so there was this sense that you just kept quiet about it. And so men's work, I felt like there were people that I could bump into every once in a while who had the same pursuits and interest of truth that I did. And it was, I have to say that I found New Thought in as a central part of my spiritual exploration back in the 1980s. And during that time, and I off and on, became involved in attending classes and, services at Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado, a New Thought community. And it really fed me. But I was on again, off again with it, and really got deeply involved in the mid 90s when I said, okay, I'm really interested in this and I want to sort of pursue it. And at that point, the universe sort of brought the men's work to me. There were some guys at Mile High who formed a men's group, and they were going to host a retreat up in the mountains. And and I have to say, I was a little bit fearful to go to my first men's retreat. 'Cause I thought, what's it going to be like to be around these other guys? And there was just a sense of trepidation in doing it. But then when I did, it so fed me. It so completed part of my path and understanding. It so reaffirmed for me the importance of having men that I could talk to about, deeper topics than work and cars and sports and all the safe subjects that men could talk about, that it really accelerated my role in on the spiritual path. It really sort of reaffirmed what I was doing. And from that and becoming a religious science practitioner, being a lead in the men's work at Mile High, I rolled from going to a conference to eventually being in the leadership group and eventually leading one year one of the retreats. And from there, becoming a minister. A key role when I became a minister was to help start a men's group at the center that I was employed with as a minister. And it was just a great joy to bring guys together and to watch that same experience of guys finding like-minded men that they could connect with and talk about deeper subjects and in a safe and comfortable environment. And to recognize that being a spiritual man in this 21st century, what it means to us and how we can further along our role, not only in our personal spiritual growth and becoming the fullness of who we are, but also to bringing that masculinity back into the world with everyone else and assisting other men and being a strong male presence that honors the feminine as well. And then when I found out that your goal was to expand men's work, I said, hey, I'm on board because this is an integral part of my life.
You were actually one of the first people I talked to. I came up to home office. This was when it was up in Genesee, and we sat and we talked. And I'm like, I'd like statistics on, how many men are there? And I was trying to figure out how would a men's group? Are there enough guys? How do we do this? And you were just so supportive. I just loved it, and you jumped in from then on forward. And I'm so grateful. At times when, because we've been around for 10 years now, I realized it was 2014 when I originally started it. And so some of those times were there was still infrastructure building, and we were creating all the stuff so that we could do the work. Mm-hmm. And you were just an integral part of in a lot of that stuff. So many people were, and I felt very supported and very very affirmed in that this work was necessary. And I agree. Like a little bit about me, I too started at Mile High Church. I found that I was in a poetry group actually. And this gal was like, "Oh, you're such a mystical writer, a poetry writer." I'm like, "Okay, what's that?" And she's like, "Oh, this," and then was like, "You got to come to my center." And she's like, "Mile High Church," and I'm like, "Yeah, church, no, thank you." And so it took me a little while longer, being raised Catholic. I wanted nothing to do with that after I was out, but eventually she won over. Thank you for her persistence, and I went there and fell in love with it. Started taking classes, started doing workshops, and in one workshop specifically, there were several people that I met who were into men's work. I didn't know it at the time, and then got supported in finding a mentor through this woman, Mary. And so a lot of us find men's work through the women that care about us, that want to support us, that want to see us resourced, and want to see us encouraged and inspired and supported.
Well, I
But
bless you
yeah,
for all you've been doing. I've watched your growth from the beginning days, and how there is,
yeah,
the men's retreats and conferences, and to this
um,
summit, and you're continuing to just push the envelope and growth and new thought and men's work and new thought. And I just want to express my appreciation for all you're doing.
oh,
Thank you.
thanks, Mark. Yeah, and me too. I was involved with Mile High's men's group and a lot of other independent ones. The Men's Leadership Alliance out of Boulder, Tom Daly and Jeffrey Duvall and Keith Fairmont
Mhm.
were a couple of, and still are a couple of my mentors. Tom's speaking actually at the summit as well. But yeah, and then at one point I just realized, like, this is it. This is the thing. Like, I was just talking to Dennis Merritt Jones, and there was one point where I was like, "Okay, Spirit, if you want me to be of larger service, what is mine to do?" And I'm sitting there waiting for this grand epiphany, like, "Oh, this is what you're supposed to do." And it was this, the still small voice. It was just like, "You've been doing men's work for 30 years. You've been doing, science of mind for 30 years. Why don't you just put the two together? How about that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's brilliant." And at first I thought, "Oh, that's simple. That's too simple. It needs
Too
to be more
simple.
complex." Boy, was I wrong about it. There's plenty complex now, having created the summit. Plenty of complexity, but it's what I love. It's what I'm passionate about. It's what I have done for a long time, and still enjoy, just getting together and just sitting in circle with others, sitting in circle with men, just listening to their stories and supporting them. There's something so powerful and validating about genuinely having our story heard,
Hmm.
about someone really actively listening, and especially a group, as we know through Lynn McTaggart's work, The Power of Eight.
Right.
um, her study on this, about something that's been happening for hundreds and hundreds of years, that we know about, men and women getting together and doing that work, just sharing their stories and being heard and being blessed and being able to care and tend to the wounds, the challenges, the struggles, and also celebrate the joys and the successes and the
Yeah, there's
excitement.
only so far you can go with your spiritual development by yourself. And
Right.
yes, you can sit in meditation and you can have experiences, of the divine and grow that way. But at a certain point, you have to interact with other people, get feedback, get their perspective, and there's a different growth that occurs in the world of form, in the world of stuff, in the world of relationship with other expressions of the one. You can know oneness at one level, but you're going to know it deeper by having those relationships with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And this is the exciting thing about it, is like, we really, in men's groups, we practice this stuff. We get to practice healthy communication. We get to
Mhm.
practice having difficult conversations. We get to practice listening skills. We get to practice all of these things. So it's really creates success for life in a lot of respects, whether that's success in your intimate partnership or with your kids, with your business partners, or, just with people in general. For me, that's what's brought me anyhow. And I'm so grateful for that. And my desire is to pay it forward and to be able to share this in a deeper way and in a more powerful way with our spiritual community of New Thought, which I love. These are the people, that's my spiritual family. You're the people I want to hang out with, and that I am fortunate enough to get to hang out with. And you too, Mark. And it's been a wonderful journey in getting here.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful. So thank you for that little caveat into men's work, because it's important that we talk about what did we get from it? What's the importance of it, and how necessary it is, and the skills and the practice, the tools that we get to put into our toolbox of life more effective and healthy in those ways. And so speaking of being more healthy and effective, let's talk about our foundational tool in New Thought of affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment.
Absolutely.
Go for it.
Well, this topic, which I know you wanted included in the summit, it was an honor to be able to talk about it, and sometimes it's real easy to sort of like say, oh, that's old stuff. I've known that for years, and everybody's got that and understands it. So I want to get into something deeper and more mystical, or something that's more cutting edge, et cetera. But I think when I look back at New Thought in general, and in Ernest Holmes' Science of Mind specifically, I think that the process of affirmative prayer, and specifically Holmes' work in creating the process of spiritual mind treatment, is probably one of the greatest gifts that he gave humanity. And not only does it serve as a process for creating and manifesting the highest life in this world, this material world, but what's often overlooked is the fact that it's actually a tool for our spiritual growth and development, the spiritual path that we're talking on. So no matter what we're looking at in life, the spiritual mind treatment can play a role in our next steps along that spiritual path. It's real easy when we first learn about affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment to focus on getting stuff in life, that we see it as a tool to manifest things that we feel like we're lacking. And what we often miss is that the tool itself is a tool that's designed to lift us into the mystical realms of oneness. And so it's not simply about manifesting abundance and prosperity, or the red car, or the job, or what all the other things are, but it's really about getting us connected to God and connected to the oneness, connected to spirit. In the program we did for the summit, I walked through the process, and the process is very simple, but it takes a lot of practice. And the process is essentially to shift your focus and attention outward from the world that's going on around you, to go in that moment and recognize that everything is one. So it's a focus on the oneness of life. It's a focusing then on the second step in it, is the focus that oneness includes you. So you are in that oneness. And so, in what I often teach in classes is that those are the two most important steps in my mind. That's the part where you're actually stepping out of this experience of life where, oh, I'm in relationship with Eamon or this video stuff and filming this thing. And, our minds tend to be that we're in this relationship of other things in life and in the world. But we want to step out of that and to anchor into that real truth that we are spiritual beings, that the human experience that we're having is simply something that we are having as spiritual beings moving through this world of effects and form and time and things like that. So what the first two steps of the treatment are knowing and shifting to a consciousness of oneness and interconnectedness of all, and that you're included in that. And you stay in that until you feel it. You feel it deeply. And after you get there, the third step is to simply affirm the truth of what you desire in life from a standpoint of as it's already manifested. And it's like making affirmation statements, that I am prosperous and abundant now, would be a good one. Or, I am expressing my highest calling as a spiritual man in the 21st century. you know. So you're looking at what is it, that highest desire for you, for yourself, and then the statements of those truths, those affirmations, is the third step. And the fourth is just simply giving thanks for it, giving thanks for this life, for the experiences, the ability to manifest whatever it is you're desiring. And then the fifth step is to release it and not hang on to it, not be running it over and over in your mind, and having your consciousness negate out what you just did in the prayer. So those five basic steps are, feeling into oneness, knowing you're part of the oneness, affirming the greatest truth for yourself, feeling thanks for it, and then releasing it out. Those are the five steps, and what Ernest Holmes called the argumentative method. The argumentative method. I would mention that with practice, you can do to something he called the realization method. The realization method, why he called that the argumentative method, is simply because you're arguing with yourself. You're arguing, you're convincing your consciousness that this is all true. You're convincing yourself that you are in oneness, and that you're part of the oneness, and that these things you're saying are true, and that you're thankful for it. You're convincing yourself of it. Because all affirmative prayer is a shift in your consciousness, and the flow of thoughts through you, so you to allow yourself to be in alignment with the greatest and highest in your life. And so you go through those argumentative steps. But Holmes often, when he would pray, would simply go into silence and then say, "And so it is," or release it, because he would just simply go to a state of realizing the truth. And we can do that too. The more we do prayer, the more we do affirmative prayer, the more we live in a state of oneness and interconnectedness to all and know that truth. All we have to do is simply, what is that truth we're holding in this moment? We hold it in our consciousness and then proclaim it to be and let it go. And so that's a step you can move to or evolve to. But for most folks, the argumentative step is a beautiful step-by-step process that once you become used to doing it, it just becomes a way of life for you, and you live from that state of praying. The one thing, though, that I mentioned this a moment ago, is that when you first come into Science of Mind or New Thought, it seems like we focus on materialism, we focus on stuff, and many people come into the philosophy with a sense of lack in some area in their life. They're lacking. They don't have right relationships. They don't have friends. They don't have money. They don't have whatever it is they're desiring. They sense something in their life that they want, and then they sense there's a gap between what they want and what they're experiencing. And so when they use spiritual mind treatment, they're oftentimes trying to close that gap by having something in their manifest life outpicture that which is what they're desiring. So they're matching desires with their experience, and they use the spiritual mind treatment as a means of bringing physical life into alignment with their desires within their mental aspect of their life. But what I really have called to experience and see is that really it's a trait. It's more than that. It's good to manifest stuff in this world of form and in the material world. But it's more than that. And I think most people, when they stick with it, they get into that state that it's really a mystical tool to turn their attention focused into the oneness and into spirit. So you can sit in meditation and silence and get into oneness, and you can also use treatment as a tool for that as well. You can go out in nature and get in oneness. So there's a variety of tools that can be used for turning your attention from I'm separate and apart from everything to I'm one with everything. And there's many tools you can use, and meditation is one. Nature is one. Affirmative prayer is one. Not a lot of people look at it that way, but it's my call in this message today is to get people to see it's a tool for moving to their mystical side and moving into a state of oneness.
I agree. I think even if we look at these steps, with the 5 steps are recognition, unification, realization, gratitude, and release. I think the simpler version is spirit is, I am, I have, thank you, so it is, over and out.
Right.
But any one of those is a spiritual practice, like recognition and unification, like recognizing I am a part of this oneness, this wholeness, this universal consciousness that is manifesting in and through me, through my atoms, through my body, through my heart, my mind, through all of these cells, through this world, through this solar system, this galaxy, this universe, the multiverse, and into the cosmos. If we go macrocosm or microcosm to macrocosm, that it is present in all of that, the energy of life or the life force. I think for me, having grown up religious, I tend to stay away from the religious terminology, just because it kind of evokes, even like the word God, still evokes the Michelangelo image of the old bearded guy on the cloud taking notes, who's naughty, who's nice, all of this silly things. And for me, I've switched it over to this abstract version, which is the cosmos. Like, try and wrap your head around that. The mind wants to, bring it down into terms it understands. And so, okay, mind, try and do that one. And it's beautiful because it really is it messes with your mind in the best sense of, it doesn't allow that latch on. Oh, this is it. So there is this life force that's in, through, and as everything. How do we even conceive of that everythingness?
Yeah, you're right. You're right that there are key words, I think, that, for many people who grew up in traditional faiths, there are trigger words for them, and words like, if we talk about Christ consciousness, people will immediately think you're talking about Jesus, even though we're talking about the consciousness that was in Jesus that is in us. And so there are words like the word Christ or God or prayer or church that have these old connotations that bring up sort of a person wanting to back away from that because it's less than what they believe, and they attach it to an old mythical aspects of religion of their youth. I think at a certain point, I think that many people, if they stick with it, they can often get beyond those words and recognize there's beauty in them. But when they're talking to newbies, people who may not be familiar with their ideas of spirituality, it's oftentimes good to steer away from those. I know in public presentations, I will less use the God language and more the spirit, the one, the all. I like the word the all, or the thing itself. The thing itself is how Ernest Holmes put it. Some other New Thought writers used to put it as the all. I like that as well. But recognize it. One thing that I think that the word God did, that sometimes this flow of the infinite spirit, of the oneness of the divine, doesn't necessarily get to, is that we have multiple aspects and ways in which we experience God. And we experience God as this flow or this energy, this unifying presence, but we also have a personal relationship with it. It is flowing through us. It's expressing through us. And there's ways in which, through our intuition, we get messages, like the messages that you've gotten towards, that you were talking about earlier with men's work and the actions of bringing things together in that way. There's ways in which that spirit or God can move through us and speak to us. And we have to also be open to the presence in us. But oftentimes that sort of scares us in a way, because it seems like old religion language. But I would encourage anybody who's on the spiritual path to cultivate at some point a sense of God within them, a sense of the spirit within them, and what it feels like and how it communicates with them. And that's one way. Yes, God is in all of the material stuff around me. God is in the consciousness that I'm thinking through. But then there's also a relationship with this presence, this flow through me. So I'd like to Ken Wilber, I think, philosopher Ken Wilber, he put it one way I really liked. He said he was talking about the three faces of God, that we experience God as us, we experience God in relation to some other thing or the thou, and that's that second person where we feel that presence, and we also experience God in the manifest world around us in the third person. So the 1, 2, 3 of God. Now, always sort of stuck with me because I recognize one is to walk in nature or look around at stuff and say, I see God in all of this. It's all one, and I'm all one with it. And I can also recognize that God is within me, that there's this energy, intelligence, consciousness that's God. But then I have a relationship with something, some other power. It's there too. So God's in everything. And anytime we try to divide it, that's our humanness in the world of form, who wants to chunk things into things that are in relationship to one another. So even this three faces of God is a chunking or a map making that we use to try to wrap our awareness of it. But when actually it's all one. The outer God, the inner God, and the experience of the other thou is all one. And we get to that state of unity. That's what cosmic or consciousness or Christ consciousness really is getting that state of unity.
Mhm. Yeah, powerful. It's I love how some put it. We are that, drop of water in the ocean of
Hmm.
this spiritual beingness, but also we're the wholeness of that ocean is present within that drop,
Right.
and that drop is present, infinitely within the ocean as well. So there is this. I like those mind bender kind of thoughts that help me see this relationship that is so multidimensional and so diverse, that it shows up every time, everywhere, always. And that's, I think those are the things that I love about those first two steps. And that is a practice of just recognizing this wholeness, this oneness of all, and that if it's everything everywhere, then I'm something, I'm somewhere, I must be a part of that.
Right.
And
Right.
then even taking it to that next step of realization and the I have of affirming, yes, the universe wants my highest and greatest good. We're put here for that greater expression. And sure, sometimes that comes as money, sometimes that comes as thing, relationships or opportunities, or all the stuff in life that we want and we need to get by. But it is opening us up to this idea of deservability. I think we get so programmed of, and maybe this is just me, my neurodiversity of feeling like I wasn't enough and I wasn't deserving. And so to be able to say, I deserve abundance, I deserve love, I deserve happiness, I deserve joy and peace, I deserve this connectedness.
Well,
I
as you
have,
well know, you're not alone in this, and this is a common pattern for humans in general. I think it's the rare person who is born on the planet and feels that sense of fulfillment and worthiness from day one, and not get, and this is not to blame anything, but I think we all go through a similar kind of uh, period of experiences where we're born onto the planet as this being, and we know, and we're whole and perfect and complete in that moment. But we are parented. We look for external validation of who we are, or the messages that we get from our parents and from our schoolmates and things like that tend to we make comparisons between them, and we tend to start internalizing a lot of beliefs that are, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough. And because of our interactions with others and ourself and the stories we tell about those interactions, we
yeah,
we create this whole body of a learned experience that says we're less than. And part of our role as humans is to peel away those things, to take away the shadow side of our life, and to allow ourselves to shine fully. So I think a lot of what men's work is about, and a lot of what New Thought classes are about, is all about getting at these beliefs that we have accepted of our, that are not of wholeness, that are not of our oneness, and to peel them back and realize they're just stories we've been telling ourselves, and that we really are these perfect beings that are whole and perfect and complete, just as we are. And it doesn't mean that our actions in the world are always complete and perfect, but from a standpoint of the internalization of being a spiritual being, that I am perfect. And the more that I can embody that into my life, the more I show up as a perfect being, and remind others of their truth, and the more that I make choices that are in alignment with that perfection that sees the wholeness and the interplay of oneness in all of life.
it's such an interesting paradox, Mark, because there's our spiritual nature and then there's our human nature, and in some ways it's like they seem paradoxically opposite in some respects, and yet it is all a part of this oneness when we can align physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, then we see the clarity of when we really believe something, when we really say something, when we're really like, yes, I am, and I am that I am, even something simple like that. Oh, yes,
Mm-hmm.
I am this essence, this creative life force is in, through, and as me, in an individuated, unique expression of Amen. It has all kinds of quirkiness and has all kinds of uniqueness and all kinds of history from the past and influence from that, and that develops those perceptive lenses, right, that we see through the world.
Yeah.
And to be able to shift those is partly in that realization stage of saying, you know what, I recognize that I have a belief that I'm not enough, but also I am connected to the universe.
Right.
I am a part of this infinite possibility, and that I actually am, because the universe, we look at it and we are abundant. There's 7 octillion atoms just in this body alone, right? And that's as many stars as there are in the universe. Like, talk about micro and macrocosms. Now, maybe not exactly, but it's an approximate understanding of what we have, right? And it's that beautiful paradox of human spiritual that sometimes we bounce off of. Oh yeah, sometimes I'm in my human moment, driving down the highway, needing to get somewhere. Or, sometimes I do live in the mountains in Colorado, so I like to think of myself as the monk on the mountain. But unfortunately, the world is, you're right, you said this in your talk, the world is not that way. We need each other. We're called to do the times of the yogi or the sadhu that goes and sits in the cave is over to a certain extent. Not that we don't need that part of it ourselves. I need this time in nature and in my home and to rejuvenate. But the world also needs us too. And to have that realization that I am, and even moving on to the next practice. I mean, you could call realization affirmations right there. So that's a practice in and of itself. And then thanks, gratitude practices have become so popular, which is wonderful. It's wonderful to be grateful for the things that we have and really appreciate and deepen in that. And so, I mean, and then releasing just attachment. I don't know about any of you, but most of the things that I let go of in my life have claw marks in them and, hanging on for dear life, some things, as if it were the thing itself that was keeping me alive, or the thing that I needed the most. And to be in a place of non-attachment, very Buddhist, and be able to just accept what is. And when we put all of these 5 in a row, all of these deep practices in a row, it's like, wow, just bam, it really goes. And if you can get that and you can feel it, feel the treatment, then it's even yet that much more powerful.
It's interesting. I in the last few years, I've reconnected with several high school friends. We've always been close. We were extremely close back in high school years, but the 4 of us have been coming together routinely on Zoom calls, and we've gotten together a couple of times in the last couple of years, basically because of the health challenge of one of the members of the group. But and in this process, we've had a lot of discussions on spiritual concepts. And one of the things that is a common and an easy opening for many people who may be reluctant or resistant to seeing themselves on a spiritual path is the sense of gratitude. And I think that's the gratitude key is it is a key to opening up people into spirituality where they may not feel like they can address that. And it's been my experience that to try to get somebody to jump immediately to a sense of oneness is very difficult. You can actually get people into maybe using affirmations if you're using the hook about trying to manifest the highest and best physical life, that using affirmations for the manifestation of things and stuff and relationships is an opening too. But then once that's successful, to say, but how about we go a little bit deeper with those affirmations? It's not just about getting the red car. It's opening up yourself to prosperity in all aspects of your life, and prosperity in relationships and jobs and in your spiritual growth as well. And so those aspects of the treatment, steps of the treatment, especially the realization and the gratitude, I think I see they're introductory steps for people who maybe are needing some way of getting back into a state of comfort and being on the spiritual path. Because a lot of people, especially when they come out of scientific materialism and feeling like, only stuff is real, only matter is real, there was a reluctance in a lot of people to get into things that they might consider woo-woo like spirituality, as much as the physical people sort of, materialist people, sort of so deeply negate the religious aspects that came before them, that they ran so deeply from it that to come back to something that is that they see as less than rational, even though it's an evolved beyond, the mythic, magical stages of the old religions, to embrace the fact that there is a metaphysical realm of life. For a lot of people, they're very reluctant to do that. They're very reluctant, And one of the things that one of my friends, I asked him point blank, because we were having a lot of discussions back and forth on, life and the meaning of life, and and stuff that's meaningful and has fed us on our path. And a lot of his stuff was mental, psychological, and material stuff. And I finally asked him. I said, "Do you believe there are realms beyond the material?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, and you've helped me to see that and to understand that. And that was a real affirming comment back to me, because for me in my individual growth, I can see the stages of leaving the old religions and going into scientific materialism and seeing that only physical stuff is real, and then saying, maybe that's not quite true. There was like glimmers that opened me up to recognizing that there's a metaphysical aspect to life. But it didn't take me back to the religion of my youth. It took me to open and exploring Eastern religions and other things, and led me to New Thought. And what I discovered in the embracing New Thought and its teachings is that it has a more expansive nature of what the divine or God is, and like we were talking about earlier. And so when we can get into that space of, but still you will bump into people who say, no, only physical things are right. And, we talk, what about consciousness? Well, consciousness is a byproduct of our brain, or something, and there's things like that where there is a sort of an attempt to explain away anything metaphysical into a physical realm. And so what has been on my cutting edge of trying to teach concepts in the last few years is something that I brought into the video for the summit, when that's the aspect of trying to look at this like a map. And if you watch the video for the summit, how you brought in the teaching symbol for Science of Mind and showed how Ernest Holmes had this map about the universe being this all, and that there's consciousness and subconscious, and then the physical form, and our thoughts are thought through a law and manifest our reality. So he was actually sort of ahead of his time in bringing out a physical map that could explain the workings of how thoughts create reality. But what I've been trying to do lately is go back to some of the other ways in which people have done map making through the years, and especially resonated with the concept of the great chain of being, which sort of looks like a stacked cake in a way. And that's what I was trying to bring in with a sort of an elaborate map in the video. But just to quickly summarize it here verbally, which is real simple to say, is that we live in multiple realms at the same time, and we don't often think about it. That we're living in this physical world right now because we can look around, I can knock on stuff, see the camera, the computers, and all this, talking to you. There's all this physical stuff. But at the same time, there's more than that. And I can recognize it because I'm thinking. And then I have this awareness of what I'm thinking about. And I'm also listening to you and taking in what you're saying and thinking about that. So I'm in a mental realm as well. So every day I can see, well, I'm in a physical realm and I'm in a mental realm. Okay. And then also what the great chain of being and other spiritual paths have taught for many, many years is that above that is a spiritual realm. So we can sort of look at it like a 3-layered cake, but there's no divisions between the layers. It's simply physical form or matter. This is where we experience time and the relative life, and we're going through the experiences of our life from birth to death. But above that is the mental realm, where we're telling stories about it and we're using the power of our thoughts to create. But above us is a spiritual realm. And the spiritual realm is the essence of oneness, or the divine or God. And that what we see is that God, and this, I'm not saying anything that's new. This is stuff that mystics and people have been saying for eons, is that the spirit or God or the one or the all basically created this world. It's a playground for experience, and that the divine is experiencing its creativity through us. It's experiencing a state of bliss and joy through the actions that we're doing. But it gave us free will choice to sort of like screw up and tell bad stories about ourselves and so forth, and to grow through them. But what we're doing is, and that process of embedded itself into us was technically called involution, but we're evolving backwards. And so we're on this hero's journey where we were born out of oneness. We're cast out into the world of form or matter. And now we're evolving back into oneness through a return to remembrance of our truth that we came from spirit. And so Ernest Holmes spoke of this in many of his writings. He never outlined that sort of three-layered cake I'm talking about. He did actually in his writings, but he never drew a map of it. And so I found a lot of his quotes where he talked about us moving through these various realms. Some people, and he called it vibratory levels, that we're vibrating at different levels. And this is stuff that you'll see in so many writings and so many other books. A great book that really drove this home for me a few years ago was I discovered a book called The Kabbalion by William Walker Atkinson. He was a New Thought teacher back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He published a magazine called New Thought. He wrote under a lot of different names, a lot of pseudonyms, but he wrote under the pseudonym Three Initiates to create a little book in 1908 called The Kabbalion, where he put out what he thought were the ancient teachings of the Hermetic teaching, and he outlined concepts in it. And this sort of state of everything is one, but it's all interconnected, and what we experience is difference. The spiritual realm versus the material realm seems to be an other or in our thinking. And what we need to shift in our thinking is to see their interconnectedness. And Ernest Holmes said this. He has writings where he calls about the spiritual realm and the mental realm and the physical realm. They're intersphered is the word he used. I love that. And intersphering, basically, you can sort of think about it like overlapping circles in a Venn diagram. But all of the aspects of our experience are in this energetic flow. And we every day move up and down in our thoughts between, are we focused on the lower realm, material world, and see things in relationship and separate from one another, or are we focused on the upper realms of the absolute and God and the timeless? So in spirit is the realm of timeless, and in the realm of matter is the experience of time. And when we talk about the timeless, or we talk about eternity is not time going on forever and ever and ever. Eternity is stepping out of time and being in the sense of the timeless. And stepping into the absolute is getting out of the world of the relative, where we see each other in relation to one another, and moving into a state where we're totally in one with each other. And to bring this back to why I'm bringing this up, that we are floating between the world of form or matter, physical world, to the mental world, of the spiritual world, is that in the mental world, when we're using treatments and shifting our consciousness and our thoughts, are we anchored in the spirit world and doing that? Are we anchored in it? And when we first learn treatment, we're often doing it to bring about something in the material world. But the treatment is really to design in those first two steps, not only to anchor us into the power and presence, the divine that's within us, but also to anchor into what Holmes called the divine patterns that existed for us. Now, to be clear, we have free will about what we're going to choose and create in our lives. But in the spiritual realm, there is a divine pattern of the great and good expression of what's possible for us. And when we can turn our attention into less specifics in the world of form and more into the divine patterns, then we create what Holmes called harmony. Harmony was allowing the flow of God to move through our thoughts to create heaven on earth. And so our role, and one of the things that's in the spiritual mind treatment, is that when we take in this mental realm, we look downward and say, oh, I want the red car. That is one way of using the prayers to manifest stuff. But when we look upward to spirit, when we anchor in the oneness and we taste into the divine patterns of the highest possibilities for us, then what we're doing is allowing the energy of the divine to flow through our thoughts so deeply that we create miracles. This is what the Course in Miracles is really trying to get at, is to create that miracle flow within us. And that's what Holmes was trying to create. And the quote that I think you were referencing earlier when we were talking, that Holmes in his later years said that it's great and okay to use treatment for manifesting money and things like that. But the real goal in it is to develop spiritual oneness and spiritual awareness. And so that's why, I'm sort of on my high horse about, yes, treatment's great for creating and filling the lacks that we see in our life, but its greater power comes in us being in alignment with the divine patterns and the oneness of life and allowing it to flow through us.
And that's the mystical view of life. I mean, you just went into it so beautifully, Mark. That's the mystical, metaphysical looking at life. And when we can see it from that perspective, which is an act of faith, like there was something, I forget what it was, but it was like, there is something about using treatment to manifest things that builds trust around, yes, this is real. Because Ernest Holmes said, don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself and see what the effect is on your life. And so initially, I think there is this building of trust with this process, with the cosmos, with the universe, with God, whatever words you like, about, yeah, okay, but can I really have what I want? Is that really, I've done, posters. We do this every year, the vision poster for the new year. And I go back through and there's like 95% of it is like, oh, yep, that showed up, got that, that happened, got that. And it's just so powerful. Like, I'm at a point where there isn't that, there is such faith, I guess, and this is where the word maybe faith comes from. There is such faith in that process that I know that this is effective. I know that I can get results. But the truth is, if we can have the results that we want, are those really the results for our highest good? Yeah. Is the red car, is the $1 million, is the thing that we're seeking? And I'm not saying don't pursue those. I have those dreams myself. Right. Absolutely. I imagine the good I can do with millions and millions of bucks. I think we all do. But to be able to then surrender and go, okay, if I could be of the greatest good to this world, like if I'm the greatest good right now because I am the spirit incarnate in Amen, in this world, in North America, in Colorado, what is the greatest? That's my greatest good. Spirit life has transported me right here, has evolved me and supported me in being who I am right here. And that's the blessing. That's the perfection. But then how can I align more with that? How can I be the conduit through which this interconnectedness, this oneness, is able to then serve the greater good? Oh, I get to be of service to this person. I get to just say something inspiring to this person. I get to move my car over so that other person can go by. Then it's like the whole experience of life is this consciousness, is about service, is about the give back, is about gratitude, is about affirmation, is about being in the one, is about, thank you, and letting go. And so, in a sense, we're living this treatment on the more metaphysical level. And I love that you went there, because there is this greater unfoldment that I've noticed after doing treatments for now, more than 15 years and being a practitioner and having seeing this tool at work, which is powerful, but to also see the transformative effect that it's had on me, and not necessarily just the affirmation part, not the I want part, but all of the different parts.
Yeah. You hit on a good point, Eamon, is that when somebody first encounters a spiritual mind treatment and they're testing it, that they do need some validation that it's working. I see a lot of people who come to New Thought centers and they learn the tools and tricks and so forth. And I see several things happen. One is they try it out and they say, this is BS. It doesn't work, and there's a lot of reasons why it won't work. But the biggest one is when you don't believe it's going to work, you're getting that experience back to you. That's one of many, many reasons why it might not work. The other thing that'll happen is that it will solve whatever their issue is at that moment. You came in because you were suffering over a loss in life, and now you got beyond the period of grief and you're feeling better. Then you may leave and say, well, got what I needed, I'm out of here.
Got
But
it.
people who stay with it and practice the techniques, what they discover is that, yeah, it manifests a higher and greater life, but at some point, you recognize that it's not about the stuff, that the stuff is okay and good, but there's a greater thing that comes through the experiences, through the relationships, through the spiritual growth that you have, the understanding of meaning of how life works and what your role in life is, et cetera. And as that develops and you stay with it, you can continue to go deeper and really do develop a mystical side. But one of the things I always try to point out as well is that, and we sort of touched on this earlier, is that the more mystical I can become and the more I move up from the physical to the mental to the spiritual, it's not going to have me just stay up there like I'm some monk on the mountain, divorced from life. Now, let me hold that thought.
Darn it. That's what
I was going
hoping.
to say, I could, because spirit is embedded in everything, and it's calling forth for the expression of itself in the most fullest and multiplicity of ways. And so one of the ways in which spirit might experience itself is to come back to be the monk on the mountain and experience in the silence and sit in it. But for most of us, it's to have a degree of enlightenment, a degree of understanding of what the meaning of life is, and then to come back into the world with that understanding, and then to be of service to the world with a recognition of the unity of all that is. And so that's really, we're getting to a state of non-duality when we can do that. Not only do we move into the state of non-duality in our own consciousness, but we're moving into seeing the world in a non-dual way and wanting to be in my role as an individualized expression in this unity. How can I be of service to the one? And that's what I think we ultimately are called for if we stay on the path.
One of my quantum physics teachers put it like this: it's the do and the be. So you want to be doobie, 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 doobie. You want to be in both of those. You want to be in the physical expression, and we're in a physical body for a reason. We have these feelings and thoughts and experiences and tactile sensations for a reason. But we are also this soulfulness. We are also this beyond time and beyond space, as you said, this infinite being, or this consciousness that lives on. Ernest Holmes, I think he put it, is we spiral upward. I love that. Instead of like we're going to heaven or nirvana or what, we spiral upward and outward. In the doing and the beingness of us having this human experience, I think that's the thing. It's like I get to come home, I get to meditate, I get to have my beautiful, wonderful space in the mountains, and I also want to go into the world and I want to help people and I want to support this and I want to get guys together because we have these very tangible needs, and people together because we all have these needs as human beings. And if we answer that call, if we're in the doobie part of it, if we can have that life soul balance on some level, then I think, and we're in our purpose, then we are building the world that we want to see. We're building a world that works for all.
Right. Another way of expressing what you just said is that there is an ever non-changing state of beingness that is embedded in all that is, including you and I. So we have a state of being, but we are also these spiritual beings that are in movement. We're in a state of becoming. That's what the do part you were talking about. So we are being and doing, but and it's not an either or, which a lot of people want to look at it that way, that I want to get to a state of bliss and oneness and a state of being and recognize it and just sit there. Or I want to just be acting in the world of form and doing. And it's an and. We have to be anchored in being as we are moving through a process of becoming. And it's not either or, it's both. We're called to be anchored in being and recognize our state of being, but also be growing in a state of ever becoming and never arriving in that as well. And that's what the spiritual path really is about for us, is to stay in both of those. And that three-layer cake of spirit embedding itself down in this world of form and us in our world of thoughts, it's all about us. It's navigating through this with a greater and higher awareness of the spiritual truth that's above us. And when I say above us, that's all relative words. I got to say that too.
Yeah.
That in the speck of nothingness that is right here is matter, consciousness, and God.
Mm, yeah. I love this Aurobindo quote. We are not here to escape the world, but to realize its spiritual nature.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's the embodiment of those two things coming together, is the realization that, yes, it is all that oneness. It is all that interconnectedness and that interplay, that we get to be these amazing and full and whole and perfect spiritual beings. And we get to be these flawed human beings that learn through failure and falling on our face, and these successes and these joys and all that the human form and the human joy, the human beingness gets to enjoy in this life. And when we bring those two together, we have that purpose. We get to be of greater service. We get to be the tool that is used, or the tool that is necessary in the moment, and in those special moments that we get to show up and be our authentic self, and that we actually get to have an impact on our own life or on someone else's life.
Yeah, and in the same way is to look at this and recognize that, okay, if everything is one and everything is unity, then to also recognize that we're going through and chunking things up into less than unity, but not ever to divide it, but only to explain and understand it and experience it. And this brings us back to men's spirituality and the fact of being a spiritual man. Well, a man is and our gender is an expression in the physical realm. Okay, so a person's either physically has the genitalia as a man or a woman, kind of thing. But there's also in the mental realm a recognition of the gender as understood in the consciousness of the expression. And then gender is expressed at the spiritual realm as well. And so we can see that everything on these multiple levels that I was talking about get expressed out in different ways. I want to hold that thought. I want to say one thing is that a minute ago I mentioned we were talking about science and understanding stuff and people testing things. Empirical testing, or natural science, is how we look at the world of form, the world of stuff. Science is a tool for understanding how the interrelationship between things in the material world. There's also mental science, that's just the understanding of the psyche and consciousness and the understandings of how we think. And there's also spiritual science, which is understanding the interplay of the divine with everything else. And so when I take these three layers, we can apply science in different ways. And I bring this up because Ernest Holmes tended to equate religion and spirituality in a way that's different than how we do nowadays. Nowadays, we make a difference between your spiritual but not religious, and we look at religious as being the dogma of old faiths and such. But Holmes didn't look at it that way. To him, spirituality and religion were the same. And so when Holmes talked about religious science, he was talking about spiritual science. So when we first come to religious science, we often think, well, it's about testing on one level. It's that do the spiritual mind treatment and see if you're manifesting what you want. And if you do, then it's validating for you that the process of thinking and you're having to bring in your alignment and actions into alignment with what your desires are can manifest your world. And so we test it empirically in the physical world. But we're also using the mental realm, and it's part of a mental science. And we're also, when we can turn upward and see, or in the spiritual realm, the oneness of all it is, and that there's divine patterns that are in spirit, then we're also using a spiritual science, which Holmes called religious science. And so through many years, science of mind was called, and it can still be called, religious science, because Holmes was really trying to get us to uplift the scientific aspect of life, to see it from the spiritual plane of existence, rather than simply employ it in the material realm and see that, and test it in the material realm. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an interesting thing, and I'm not the first one to point that out. That's some stuff that I've discovered through, which I saw probably years ago and didn't relate to it. But back to men and women for a minute, because I know that's this is central. So here I am. I'm a physical man in the 21st century, and I've worked through a cultural stuff where people have said this is what it's like to be a man, this is what it's like to be a woman, et cetera. And many men were learned lessons in the material world about what it was like to be a man, and they got that through their interactions with other people, including their fathers and other men. And that stuff I was talking about earlier about the safe subjects I could talk about with, that was through my experience. I thought this is what a man looks like. Okay.
Yeah.
And that had a body of my beliefs that I had regarding a man in the 20th century, 21st century. And over time, that vision has grown. I learned patterns that weren't ultimate truth. That in spirit, when I can look upward to spirit, that yes, we have certain genders in the physical realm, but ultimately we are all one being. And that opens us to several ways of changing how we look at masculinity and femininity. It's been, the growing aspect of people recognizing that their gender doesn't necessarily have to align with their genitals. So it means that people in the mental realm are feeling and honoring an aspect of themselves that they feel is different from them in alignment with their physical forms. And so the growth of expectations in that area is actually an opening towards a greater expansiveness of what it means to be a man and a woman. And so now we're seeing, and it's easy to want to go back and be very clear cut and either or kind of, you're either a man or a woman, but now we're seeing its fluid nature in the understanding of gender. And so that's one thing that I think we need to be open to. But the other thing is that as a man, what is my role as a man in terms of interacting with others in this world? What consciousness am I picking up through my intuition, through spirit, that I am to bring and to be into this life? And it's a man of heart and care and concern, someone who sees the interplay of oneness, that sees that everybody is valuable, that there is an aspect of life that involves masculinity and femininity in everything. And so even though I'm physically a man, I have within me both masculine and feminine aspects. And this taps into the spiritual realm of sexuality and some of the parts of Holmes that I didn't initially understand when I was first reading it. But the aspects at the mystical level, that masculinity means the impetus of the thought, and femininity meant the receptive nature of the thought that then created it. We can have no creation without the masculine and the feminine working together. You sort of think like the yin-yang symbol. You got to have both parts or you have no creative abilities. So the creation process is an involvement or an interplay between thought and action upon the thought. And if you go back and look at the teaching symbols as taught in Science of Mind textbook, you'll see masculine listed up at the top and the feminine in the middle as the receptive piece. That has nothing to do with our sex in the planet. It has to do with an interplay of the creative force of the universe, that the creative force in the universe is a melding of the masculine and the feminine. So what does it mean, to be a man? Using my three-layered cake for a moment, in the world of form, we have a sexual body, and it has different genders. In the male, as we move up vibrationally into the realm of the mental realm, we can identify differently than what our bodies say. We can start this fluid nature, who do you identify as? And in the spiritual realm, we can see that everybody has masculine and feminine aspects within them because they're all creative beings. And so now all of a sudden, if you start seeing this sort of mystical truth that's been underlying everything, it changes your outlook on what does it mean to be a man. And being a man on one level is our cultural learned experience that says this is a man.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that we are limited by that. that we are limited to express ourselves as a masculine man in the 21st century in an infinite variety of ways. But all of it is anchored in a truth that we're all creative beings, intersphered, intermixed in a state of oneness. So I'm an individual expression who is expressing in this unique ability, this unique way as a man in the 21st century, just as you are. And so, if anything, all of this calls us to is to break down the barriers of the limited thoughts that we thought about what it was to be a man previously, and to have a more expansive view of that so that we can show up in the infinite variety of ways in which men can express a spirit.
Yeah, and that is where we're headed. Like that is the whole human being, right? The whole person.
Right.
We're not stuck in these stereotypical boxes of men aren't emotional. Men don't have emotions. Well, some men don't because they've stuffed them. A lot of us don't because we've stuffed them for so long, or we're just not. I mean, I don't even know that that's true, because it's like we have them. We may not acknowledge them, but we're still having them. So, to take the gender out of it and to say, oh, emotions, that's the realm of women, thought, that's the realm of men, action, that's the realm of men, spirituality is the realm of women. Those are those old stereotypes that are dying, that are going away, that we're like, we're whole human beings here. We don't need to be stuck in these roles. And I think a lot of the LGBTQIA plus community, that's one of the gifts that they've helped us really kind of take the gender norming that happens in society out of the equation, or at least lessen it to the extent of, why is that masculine and this feminine? Why do we even have to label them that way? And I think that's where I see young people who are much more in tune with that understanding. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I can just be more fluid. I don't need to label this as masculine, this is feminine. I just get to be my authentic self.
And the great gift of what you're doing with men's work is to take those men who were not steeped in that belief from an early age, and to open them to the expansive nature of what it means to be a masculine man. And men's work is really about tapping into our oneness and our spirituality and our truth, to unlearn those things that limit us. At the end of the day, it doesn't mean that we can't enjoy football games on TV or any of that stuff that as a man I've sort of acclimated in myself that bring joy to my life, But at the same time, it's to allow myself to see that however anyone chooses to enjoy and express their life, as long as they're not harming anybody else, if it's uplifting and bringing more life and happiness to the planet, and they're doing it in a different way, for me to celebrate the bliss that they're bringing to the planet through the way that they're expressing. And so the beauty of men's work is to break down the barriers of the old beliefs about what it's like to be a man in this culture, and to make it expansive. And then, and what are you doing in doing that? You're bringing a greater state of wholeness to the person. Because before, they had to make this distinction. I'm a man, this is a woman, and as you were saying, these are the roles and things that we've accepted as true for one or the other. And the more that we can break those down, the more that we open ourselves to a sense of interplay of the wholeness and the oneness of life.
Yeah, agreed. You sort of preempted my closing question here, Mark. Good. of what does healthy masculinity look like? But I'm going to ask you for the synopsized view of kind of what we've already been talking about. Right. Is what in your view does healthy masculinity look like in the 21st century?
Healthy masculinity in the 21st century to me is somebody who lets go of any sense of limitation and lack that they have in their life, anything that they have learned that's held them back from being the fullest and greatest expression of themselves, to continue to grow on their spiritual path, to remember their oneness, to recognize that unity of everything, and then to bring it and to use the spiritual tools to not only manifest a good life for themselves, an enjoyable life for themselves, but to also support others in expressing their fullest lives as well. And so it's not about, yes, we can play a role in life as a man, but let's not limit ourselves to the roles that we've been taught. And let's see ourselves as living in our authenticity, whatever that looks like. And it doesn't have to be based on stereotypes that we were taught when we were younger. That in our authenticity is to find out what is true for this individualized expression as me. What brings me happiness and the bliss of life, and how can I bring the happiness and bliss to others? And so I think the role of a healthy man is the role of a healthy human. It is about helping each other to remember their truth and to live their fullest life.
Mm.
And all we're doing with the masculine stuff is to allow ourselves to let go of the limitations about what masculinity had to look like, and to not put those old stereotypes on others as well. And to the degree that we can be a force for breaking down the barriers and allowing everyone to have the expansive choices of what their lives can look like, then I think that's the healthiest masculinity we can bring to the planet.
Yeah, agreed. And we can still keep our trucks and power tools. I love mine.
Me too.
And we can still be of heart, and we can be of soul too.
Yeah.
Like those aren't exclusive things.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
The full spectrum of human experience, from things we labeled masculine to things we've labeled feminine in the past.
Yeah.
They're all up for the full experience of each and every one of us right now.
Yeah. That's it. Mark, I mean, we could go on for quite a while, my friend, but you'll come back. We'll talk more. But thank you so much for all that you've done for this community, all that you've done for me, and all that you've done for spirituality, all that you've done for men's work. So you are truly an example of one of those heartfelt men, a holistic man. And I applaud you, and I'm grateful for you in my life. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Eamon. And good luck to all you do.
Thanks, brother.
Okay.
And so, this is it for today. And there's more to come. So stay tuned in. I hope you enjoyed this interview from the New Thought Men's podcast. For instant access to all podcast interviews, talks from our summit, men's groups, and so much more, join us at newthoughtmens.community. Thanks so much for being with us today. There's more to come, so stay tuned in.